They thought I was unconscious. They thought the stroke had taken my mind along with my balance. I lay there in the sterile hospital bed, eyes closed, listening to my only son and his wife plan the end of my life. They were not discussing my recovery. They were discussing the sale of my house. They were calculating how quickly they could put me in a state-funded facility so they could cash out the equity I had built over 40 years of hard work. I did not open my eyes. I did not cry. I just listened. And when I finally walked out of there, I made sure they would regret every single word they said in that room. Hello, everyone. I am Tina. Today I bring you a story that will challenge everything you think you know about family loyalty. Stay with me until the very end to understand why silence is sometimes the loudest weapon. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss these journeys of truth. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was the only thing keeping me grounded. If not for that steady sound, I might have screamed. I was 68 years old. I had spent the last 30 years as a widow, raising my son David to be a good man. I paid for his college tuition in full. I helped him buy his first car. When he married Jessica, a woman who always looked at me with cold calculation, I welcomed her. I even let them move into the guest cottage on my property when David lost his job 3 years ago. I thought we were a family, but as I lay there, recovering from a minor stroke that had frightened me more than I admitted, I learned the truth. She is done, David, Jessica whispered. Her voice was sharp. It cut through the hospital air like a knife. The doctor said she needs rest. That means full-time care. We cannot afford a nurse. I know, David replied. His voice lacked the hesitation I hoped to hear. But putting her in a home, she hates those places. She made me promise, Jess. Promises don't pay the mortgage, David, Jessica snapped back. Look at the reality. We are drowning in debt. The market is high right now. If we sell her house, we walk away with at least $600,000. We put her in that facility on the east side. It is decent enough. Medicare covers it. We take the house money, pay off our loans, and finally start living. I felt a tear try to escape the corner of my eye, but I willed it to stop. My son was silent. I waited for him to defend me. I waited for him to say that this was my home, my life, my blood and sweat in those walls. Okay, David said softly. You are right. We have to be practical. I will tell her it is temporary. Just until she gets better. She does not need to know we are listing the house immediately. The betrayal settled in my chest, heavier than the stroke itself. They were not just ungrateful. They were thieves. They viewed me as an obstacle to their financial freedom. They assumed that because I was old, I was stupid. They assumed that because I was a mother, I would forgive anything. They were wrong. I waited another 10 minutes before I pretended to wake up. When I fluttered my eyes open, David was sitting in the chair, holding my hand with a fake look of concern plastered on his face. Jessica was scrolling on her phone, likely looking up real estate agents. Mom, David said, squeezing my hand. Thank God. You gave us a scare. I am fine, I said. My voice was raspy, but it was steady. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw a stranger. I am ready to go home. The next 2 days were a blur of fake smiles and whispered conversations in the hallway. When the doctor cleared me for discharge, David and Jessica drove me home. But the atmosphere in the car was tense. They were nervous. They were about to execute their plan. We arrived at the house, my beautiful Victorian home that I had bought in 1982 with my late husband. The garden was blooming. It looked like a sanctuary. We sat in the living room. Jessica poured me a glass of water. Mom, David started, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. We need to talk about your recovery. Jessica and I have been thinking. This house, it is too much for you. The stairs, the maintenance, it is dangerous. We found a lovely place, Jessica added quickly. It is an assisted living community, just for a few months, until you are back on your feet. We think it is best if you go there tomorrow. We will handle the house for you. They expected me to argue. They expected me to cry and beg to stay in my own home. They had their counter-arguments ready. Instead, I took a sip of water and set the glass down gently on the coaster. I smoothed the fabric of my skirt. Okay, I said. David blinked. Okay? You agree? If you think it is best, I said, keeping my face completely neutral. I am tired, David. Maybe you are right. Maybe I need rest. Relief washed over them. They exchanged a look of triumphant glee. They thought they had won. They thought the hard part was over. "I will go upstairs and pack a few things," I said. "I will be ready to leave in the morning." I walked up the stairs slowly, gripping the banister, listening to them celebrate in hushed whispers below. "I told you she would cave," Jessica whispered. "Call the realtor." I went into my bedroom and locked the door. I did not pack clothes. I pulled my old leather suitcase from the back of the closet. I did not fill it with sweaters or shoes. I walked to the safe hidden behind the vanity mirror. I spun the dial. Click, click, click. It opened. Inside were the deeds to the house, the titles to the cars, the access codes to my investment accounts, and most importantly, the power of attorney documents I had drafted 5 years ago but never showed them, documents that explicitly revoked any authority they thought they had over me if I was incapacitated. I emptied the safe. I took my jewelry. I took the cash stash I kept for emergencies, $10,000 in $100 bills. I packed my laptop. I looked around the room one last time. This was my house, and it would remain my house, but they would not be living in it. The next morning, I came downstairs with my suitcase. David was waiting by the door, car keys in hand, eager to drive me to the nursing home. "Ready, Mom?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "but I will not be needing a ride from you." A horn honked outside. A yellow taxi was idling in the driveway. "A taxi?" Jessica asked, frowning. "Where are you going? The facility is expecting you at noon." "I am not going to the facility," I said calmly. I walked past them, my head held high. I opened the front door and felt the fresh air on my face. "Mom, what are you talking about?" David panicked, following me onto the porch. "You can't live here alone. We decided." "You decided," I corrected him, turning around to face them one last time. "You decided to sell my home. You decided to discard me. Now I have made a decision." I walked down the steps. The taxi driver got out to take my bag. "Mom!" David yelled. "Where are you going?" I got into the back seat of the taxi and rolled down the window. I looked at my son, the boy I had loved more than life itself, and I felt nothing but a cold, hard resolve. "I am going to a hotel," I said. "And then I am going to my lawyer's office. Enjoy the house for the next 24 hours, David. Because that is all the time you have left in it." I signaled the driver. As the taxi pulled away, I watched them standing in the driveway, small and confused. They had no idea that the storm was not coming. The storm had just left, and it had taken their future with it. The taxi driver watched me in the rearview mirror. He saw an older woman clutching a leather handbag, staring out the window with dry eyes. He did not know that I had just severed the tie to my only child. He did not know that inside my bag sat the legal power to destroy the life my son thought he had secured. The city passed by in a blur of gray and steel. I felt a strange vibration in my chest. It was not fear. It was the adrenaline of a soldier who has finally decided to pick up a weapon. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked again, his voice gentle. "The Grand Hotel," I said. "The one downtown, on 4th Street. He nodded. I could see the surprise in his eyes. He expected me to say a train station, or perhaps a relative's house. He did not expect a 70-year-old woman to book a room at the most expensive hotel in the city. But that was the first mistake David and Jessica made. They assumed that because I lived simply, I lived poorly. They assumed that because I wore the same wool coat for 5 years, I could not afford a new one. My late husband, Robert, had been a careful man. He taught me to save. He taught me to invest. When he passed away in 2010, he left everything to me. Not to David, to me. He knew our son had a weakness for easy money, and he knew I would always protect the family legacy. I had let David live in my house rent-free to help him get on his feet. I had let Jessica redecorate the kitchen to make her feel welcome. I had been generous, and my generosity had been repaid with betrayal. We pulled up to the gilded entrance of the Grand Hotel. A doorman in a long coat opened my door. I stepped out, smoothing my skirt. I walked to the reception desk with the same posture I used to hold when I chaired the library board. "I would like a suite," I told the young woman at the desk, "for an indefinite stay, and I require complete privacy. If anyone calls asking for me, you are to say, 'I am not here.'" I handed her my credit card. It was a black card, one that I kept hidden in the safe alongside the deeds. The receptionist's eyebrows lifted slightly, but she simply nodded and typed on her keyboard. "Of course, Mrs. Henderson. We have the governor's suite available. It has a view of the park." "That will be fine," I said. Once I was in the room, I locked the door and sat on the edge of the king-sized bed. The room was silent. It smelled of lavender and fresh linen. It was a stark contrast to the tension that had filled my home for the last 6 months. My phone began to buzz in my purse. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, I took it out. 5 missed calls from David, 3 from Jessica, and 1 text message that popped up on the screen. "Mom, stop acting crazy. The taxi dropped you off downtown? Come home. Jessica is crying. You are confusing everyone." I let out a short, dry laugh. Jessica was crying. Not because she missed me. She was crying because her plan had hit a snag. They did not believe my threat. They thought my declaration about the 24 hours was just the rambling of an old woman having a tantrum. They were likely sitting in my living room right now, drinking my wine, telling each other that I would be back by dinner time, apologizing and ready to sign whatever papers they put in front of me. They were celebrating a victory that did not exist. I walked to the heavy oak desk by the window and opened my laptop. I connected to the hotel Wi-Fi and logged into my email. I found the draft I had prepared months ago after the first time Jessica made a joke about putting me in a home during Thanksgiving dinner. I had hoped I would never have to send it. I had hoped it was just a bad joke. But today proved otherwise. I typed a quick email to my attorney, "Mr. Thompson. It is happening. Initiate Protocol B. I need the eviction notice served tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock sharp. I have the deeds. I am safe." I hit send. There was no going back now. My phone rang again. This time I answered it. I needed to hear their voices one last time before the hammer fell. I needed to confirm that I was doing the right thing. "Mom!" David's voice was frantic, but underneath the panic, there was anger. "Where are you? The neighbors are going to talk. You are embarrassing us." "I am safe, David," I said calmly. "Safe? You are wandering around the city. Jessica called the nursing home, and they are furious you didn't show up. We lose the deposit if you aren't there by 5. Tell me where you are so I can come get you." "I told you, David, I am at a hotel, and you are not coming to get me." "Stop this," he snapped. "You are not thinking clearly. We did this for you. The house is too big. You can't manage it. We were going to sell it to help pay for your care. It's already in the works. The realtor is coming tomorrow." "The realtor will be wasting her time," I said, "because the house is not for sale. And as of tomorrow, you will not be there to let her in." "You can't kick us out," David scoffed, his tone dripping with condescension. "You signed the papers last year giving me control of the estate, remember? You signed them." I closed my eyes. He was referring to a permission slip for a minor bank transfer I had authorized to help with his car payments. He thought that piece of paper gave him dominion over my entire life. He had never bothered to read the fine print of my trust. He had never bothered to ask what power he actually held. He just assumed that because he was a man and I was his aging mother, the power naturally flowed to him. "David," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, "I signed nothing of the sort. You are operating on assumptions, and assumptions are dangerous things." "I am done playing games," he shouted. "If you don't come home tonight, don't expect us to visit you in that facility. You will be alone. Do you hear me? Alone." "I have been alone in that house for years, David," I said, "even when you were in the next room." I hung up the phone and powered it off. I did not want to hear his threats anymore. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights flickering in the twilight. Down below, life was moving on. People were rushing to dinner, to meetings, to lovers. Up here, in the silence of the suite, I felt a heavy burden lift from my shoulders. I ordered room service. A steak, medium rare, and a glass of red wine. I ate slowly, savoring every bite. I took a long, hot bath. I wrapped myself in the thick hotel robe. For the first time in a decade, I did not have to worry about walking softly so I wouldn't disturb Jessica's sleep. I did not have to worry about David criticizing my cooking. I was free, but freedom has a price, and tomorrow my son would pay the bill. I slept soundly that night. I did not dream. When I woke up, The sun was streaming through the curtains. It was 8 in the morning. I dressed in my best suit, a charcoal gray ensemble that I usually reserved for funerals. In a way, today was a funeral. I was burying the relationship with my son. I went down to the lobby. Mr. Thompson was waiting for me. He was a tall man with silver hair and a briefcase that looked like it could stop a bullet. He stood up when he saw me and took my hand. "Are you ready, Margaret?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Do you have the sheriff with you?" "He is waiting in the car," Mr. Thompson said. "We strictly follow the law. It will be a legal eviction. They cannot claim ignorance." I nodded. "Let us go." We got into Mr. Thompson's town car. As we drove back toward the suburbs, toward the house that Robert and I had built with our own hands, my heart began to race, but I forced it to slow down. I remembered the look on Jessica's face when she told me to pack my things. I remembered David's relief when I agreed to leave. They wanted the house. They wanted the money. They wanted me gone. We turned onto my street. The trees were green and lush. It was a beautiful neighborhood, a quiet neighborhood. We pulled up to the driveway. David's car was there. Jessica's car was there. And there was a third car, a flashy convertible with a Realty One logo on the side. They had not listened. They had brought the realtor over. They were trying to sell my house while I was still breathing. Mr. Thompson looked at me. "Shall we?" "Yes," I said. "Let us interrupt the party." The sheriff stepped out of the vehicle first. He was a large man with a stern face, the kind of man who did not need to raise his voice to command a room. He adjusted his belt and waited for Mr. Thompson and me to reach the front step. My heart was thumping against my ribs, but I kept my hands clasped in front of me to hide any tremors. I took a deep breath of the fresh morning air. It smelled of cut grass and the roses I had planted 20 years ago. The front door was wide open. From the foyer, I could hear voices echoing in the living room. "The market is hot right now," a woman's voice said. She sounded brisk and professional. "If we list it by Friday, we could have a bidding war by Sunday, especially with this square footage." "That sounds perfect," Jessica said. Her voice was light, almost giddy. "We really want to liquidate the asset quickly. We have to pay for her care facility. It is very expensive." "Of course," the woman replied. "It is a difficult time for the family, I am sure. But you are doing the right thing. Selling the house is the most practical move. She won't even know it's gone," David added. His voice was smooth, confident. "Her memory is practically gone. She thinks she still runs the place." I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but it was not physical. It was the sting of betrayal. He was not just stealing my home. He was stealing my dignity. He was painting a picture of a senile, helpless old woman to a complete stranger just to facilitate a sale. Mr. Thompson looked at me. He gave a small, encouraging nod. We walked through the open door. Our footsteps on the hardwood floor were heavy and deliberate. The 3 people in the living room turned around. The scene was almost comical. The realtor, a woman in a bright yellow blazer, was holding my favorite crystal vase. Jessica was standing by the fireplace, measuring the mantel with a tape measure. David was leaning against my piano, a glass of my sherry in his hand. "David," I said. My voice was low, but it carried through the room. David jumped. The sherry sloshed over the rim of the glass and stained his shirt. Jessica dropped the tape measure. It clattered loudly on the hearth. "Mom?" David stammered. His eyes darted to the sheriff, then to Mr. Thompson, and finally back to me. What are you doing here? I thought you were at the hotel. I thought you were resting." "I am sure you did," I said. I walked further into the room. I did not look at my son. I looked directly at the woman in the yellow blazer. "Who are you? And why are you holding my vase?" The woman looked confused. She glanced at David for an explanation. I am Linda, from Realty One. Your son told me—" "My son tells many stories," I interrupted gently. "But I'm afraid he has wasted your time, Linda. This house is not for sale." David stepped forward, his face turning red. He tried to regain control of the situation. "Linda, ignore her. This is exactly what I was talking about. She is confused. She has these episodes. Mom, please, let's go outside. You are embarrassing yourself." He reached out to grab my arm. "I would not do that if I were you, sir," the sheriff said. He had not moved, but his voice filled the space like thunder. David froze. His hand hovered in the air, inches from my sleeve. Mr. Thompson stepped forward then. He did not look like a family friend anymore. He looked like the shark he was known to be in the courtroom. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick document bound in blue paper. He placed it on the coffee table with a heavy thud. "My name is Arthur Thompson," he said. "I am the senior partner at Thompson Miller and Associates. I represent Mrs. Margaret Miller, and contrary to what you may have been told, Mrs. Miller is of sound mind and body. She is also the sole owner of this property." Linda, the realtor, looked at the document. She looked at the sheriff. Then she looked at David with a mix of horror and anger. The realization washed over her face. She had been brought into a fraud. "You told me you had power of attorney," Linda said to David. Her voice was sharp now. "You told me the title was already transferred." It is a formality," David stuttered. "We are processing the papers. She is my mother. She wants me to handle this." "I want no such thing," I said. I stood tall. I felt 10 feet high. "I have never signed over my rights, David, and Mr. Thompson has just filed a restraining order against you and your wife regarding my assets. The sheriff is here to ensure you vacate the premises immediately." The silence that followed was absolute. Jessica looked as though she might faint. David looked small. For all his shouting and bullying over the last few years, he crumbled the moment real authority stepped into the room. Mr. Thompson turned to the realtor. "Ms. Linda, I suggest you leave, unless you wish to be named in the lawsuit for trespassing and conspiracy to defraud." Linda set the vase down on the table so quickly it wobbled. "I had no idea," she said to me. "Mrs. Miller, I am so sorry. I strictly follow the code of ethics. I was lied to." "I know," I said softly. "Please go." She grabbed her bag and hurried out the door without looking back at David. Now it was just family. And the law. The sheriff stepped closer to David. "Sir, I am going to need you to hand over the keys to the house, and then I am going to need you and your wife to step off the property. If you return without an invitation, you will be arrested." David looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Mom, you can't do this. This is insane. We are your family. Where are we supposed to go?" I looked at him. I remembered the night before. I remembered him telling me I would be alone. I remembered him threatening to cut me off if I didn't obey. "You have a nice apartment in the city, David," I said. "I suggest you go there, and I suggest you learn to cook, because I am done serving you." Jessica let out a sound that was half sob and half scream. She dropped onto the expensive leather sofa she had tried to force me to sell just hours ago. Her facade of the perfect, high society wife cracked completely. "We cannot go there," she wailed. She looked at David, her eyes streaming with black mascara tears. "David, tell her we cannot go back to the city." David turned a shade of pale that I had never seen before. He looked at the sheriff, then at Mr. Thompson, and finally at me. The arrogance was gone. In its place was sheer, naked panic. "David?" I asked. My voice was calm. I did not need to shout. The truth was shouting for me. "Why can you not go to your luxury apartment?" He swallowed hard. "Mom, please, can we just talk? Just us? Send the lawyer away." "Mr. Thompson stays," I said. "He is the only one here I trust." Jessica could not hold it in anymore. "We lost it," she cried out. "We lost the apartment 3 months ago. The bank took it. We have been staying in a hotel. We have maxed out everything, Margaret. Everything." I felt a cold chill settle in my stomach. It was not just greed. It was desperation. They had not come here to help me. They had not come here because they were worried about my health or my ability to live alone. They had come here to harvest me. I was just an asset to be liquidated, to cover their failures. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. He adjusted his glasses and looked at a paper in his folder. "That aligns with my investigation," Mr. Thompson said. His tone was dry and factual. "David Miller has filed for bankruptcy twice in the last 5 years under different business entities. His current debts are estimated to be over $400,000. The car in the driveway is scheduled for repossession on the 1st of November. I looked at my son, really looked at him. I saw the expensive suit that was likely bought on credit. I saw the watch that probably cost more than my first car. It was all a costume. He was playing the part of a successful man, but he was hollow inside. "You were going to sell my house," I said. "Not to pay for my care, but to pay your debts." David fell to his knees. It was a pathetic sight. A grown man, 40 years old, kneeling on the rug where he used to play with his toy trucks. "I had to," he sobbed. "Mom, I am in trouble. Serious trouble. These people I owe money to, they are not banks. If I do not pay them, I do not know what will happen. You have to help me. You are my mother. You cannot let me drown." A year ago, maybe even a week ago, that plea would have worked. I would have opened my checkbook. I would have sacrificed my comfort for his safety. But then I remembered the hospital room. I remembered the doctor asking me the date, and David rolling his eyes. I remembered them discussing assisted living facilities as if I were a piece of furniture to be stored away. They were willing to lock me away in a tiny room, medicated and forgotten, just so they could keep pretending to be rich. "I am your mother," I said. "I raised you to be honest. I raised you to work hard. Somewhere along the way, you decided that appearing rich was more important than being a good man." "Mom, please," he begged. He reached for my hand, but I took a step back. "I will not let you drown, David," I said, "but I will not let you pull me under with you. You made these choices. Now you must live with them." I looked at the sheriff. "Officer, please remove them. I want them off my property. Now." The sheriff stepped forward and took David by the arm. He hoisted him up as if he weighed nothing. "Let's go, son," the sheriff said. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Jessica stood up, wiping her face. She looked at me with pure venom. The sadness was gone, replaced by the ugly truth of her character. "You are a selfish old woman," she spat. "You have all this space, all this money, and you would see your own son on the street? You deserve to be alone." "I am not alone," I said, looking at Mr. Thompson and the sheriff. "I have people who respect me. That is worth more than all the money you wasted." They were marched out the front door. I watched through the window as they got into their leased luxury car. They argued, even as they backed out of the driveway. I watched until the taillights disappeared around the bend of the road. Only then did my knees give out. I sat down heavily in my armchair. The house was silent, but it was a peaceful silence. It was the silence of safety. Mr. Thompson sat opposite me. He closed his folder. "You did the right thing, Margaret," he said gently. "It was the hardest thing, but it was the right thing." "I know," I whispered. "But Arthur, they are still my family. How did it get this bad?" "Greed is a powerful drug," he said. "But we are not done yet. We secured your home, but we need to secure your future. David had access to your checking accounts. We need to go to the bank first thing in the morning." I nodded. I felt tired, but a new strength was rising in me. I had faced the monster in my living room, and I had won. "Arthur," I said, "there is something else. When I was in the hospital, before they brought me here, David made me sign something. He told me it was a release form for the surgery, but I did not have surgery." Mr. Thompson stiffened. His lawyer eyes sharpened instantly. "What kind of document was it, Margaret?" "I do not know," I admitted. "I was groggy. They had given me medication, but I remember Jessica smiling when I signed it. A smile like a wolf." Mr. Thompson stood up and began pacing the room. "If they tricked you into signing a power of attorney or a deed transfer while you were under the influence of medication, that is a felony. We need to find out what that paper was." "I think I know where a copy might be," I said. I pointed to the small desk in the corner that David had been using as his command center for the last 2 days. He left his laptop bag. In the confusion, he forgot it. Mr. Thompson looked at the bag. It was sitting there, like a ticking bomb. "We cannot open it," he said. "That would be a violation of privacy. However, if we hand it over to the sheriff as evidence of the fraud we just witnessed." He did not finish the sentence, but he picked up his phone. "I will call the sheriff back," he said. "Margaret, this fight is not over. It is just shifting to a new battlefield." I looked at the bag. Whatever was in there held the secret to just how far my son was willing to go to destroy me, and I was ready to find out. I was done being the victim. It was time to be the hunter. "Make the call, Arthur," I said. "I want to know everything." Arthur made the call. The sheriff returned within the hour. He took the bag into evidence, handling it with gloves like it was a murder weapon. In a way, it was. It contained the murder of our relationship. The next morning felt brittle. I woke up expecting to hear Jessica complaining about the coffee or David shouting into his phone. Instead, there was only the hum of the refrigerator. I made my tea and sat by the window. I needed to hear a friendly voice. I picked up the receiver to call my grandson, Leo. He was staying with his other grandmother, while his parents were, as they put it, handling family business. I dialed the number. It rang once. Then it went straight to voicemail. I tried David's cell. Voicemail, I tried Jessica. Blocked. A cold knot formed in my stomach. They were cutting the lines. 2 days passed in this suffocating silence. Mr. Thompson was working on the bank accounts, freezing everything so David could not drain them. I thought we were ahead of them. I was wrong. On the 3rd day, a car pulled into my driveway. It was not a luxury sedan. It was a generic sedan with a county seal on the door. A stranger stepped out. He carried a thick envelope. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened the door before he knocked. "Margaret Miller?" he asked. He did not smile. "Yes," I said. "You have been served," he said. He thrust the envelope into my hands and turned away immediately, as if I were contagious. I took the papers to the kitchen table. My hands shook so hard I nearly ripped the envelope in half. I pulled out the stack of documents. The legal language was dense, but the words jumped out at me like physical blows. Emergency ex parte order. Motion for temporary guardianship. Restraining order. I read the affidavit attached to the front. It was signed by David. The respondent, Margaret Miller, is suffering from advanced dementia and paranoid delusions, it read. On the 15th of October, she exhibited violent behavior, threatening her son and daughter-in-law with physical harm. She is a danger to herself and others. I gasped, the air leaving my lungs. Violent. I had sat in my chair. I had barely raised my voice, but the lies did not stop there. Due to her unstable mental state, the document continued, we request an immediate suspension of all visitation rights with the minor child, Leo Miller, for his own safety. The room spun. They were using Leo. They knew he was the only thing in this world that could truly break me. They were painting me as a senile, dangerous woman to keep me away from my grandson. I turned to the next page. It was a copy of the paper I had signed in the hospital. It was not a surgical release. It was a voluntary admission of incapacity. The date was the 10th of October. The signature was mine, shaky and weak, scrawled while I was drugged on painkillers. They had planned this. They had planned this the moment I got sick. They waited until I was at my weakest, drugged and confused, to steal my autonomy. And now, they were using that theft to steal my grandson. I dropped the papers. They scattered across the floor like dead leaves. I felt a scream building in my throat, a raw sound of grief and fury. I wanted to collapse. I wanted to weep until my eyes were dry. To lose Leo was to lose the future. But then I saw the date on the hearing notice. The 20th of October. That was only 3 days away. They wanted me to break. They wanted me to crumble so that when I walked into that courtroom, I would look exactly like the frail, confused old woman they described in their lies. They expected me to hide in shame. I reached for the phone. My hand was steady now. The shaking had stopped. The coldness in my chest was no longer fear. It was ice. I dialed Mr. Thompson's number. He answered on the first ring. "Arthur," I said, my voice low and clear. "They have made a mistake." "Margaret? What happened?" he asked, hearing the change in my tone. "They served me with papers," I said. "They are trying to take Leo. They are saying I am insane. They are using the hospital paper." I heard Arthur inhale sharply. "I will be there in 20 minutes. "Come prepared, Arthur," I said. "They want a war? They do not know who they are fighting. They think they are fighting a grandmother. They are about to find out they are fighting a mother who has nothing left to lose." I hung up the phone. I walked to the hallway mirror. I looked at my reflection. I did not see a victim. I smoothed my blouse. I fixed my hair. I would not cry. Not one tear. They wanted to use the law to silence me. But the law works both ways, and I had a secret weapon they had forgotten about. I walked to the bookshelf in the den. I pulled down the old photo album from 1995. I opened the back cover. Taped there was an envelope I had not touched in 20 years. David thought the hospital paper was his ace in the hole, but he had forgotten what I kept for him. Arthur sat opposite me at the dining room table. The air was thick with the smell of old paper and fresh coffee. The envelope from 1995 lay between us. It contained the original deed to the house, stating clearly that in the event of my husband's death, the property transferred solely to me, regardless of any future agreements made without a notary present. It was my shield, but I needed a sword. Arthur had arrived with a heavy briefcase and a grim expression. He did not come alone. He brought a man named Silas, a forensic accountant who specialized in tracing hidden assets. "We are not just defending you against the competency hearing," Arthur said, laying his laptop on the mahogany table. "If they want to question your mind, we will question their motives. We are going to look at everything, Margaret, every penny." For the next 4 hours, my dining room turned into a command center. Silas connected his computer to the encrypted banking portal. I had given David access to my secondary accounts 3 years ago to help manage the utility bills. I had trusted him. That trust was now a bloody wound. Silas typed rapidly. "Mrs. Miller," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "When was the last time you authorized a transfer of $5,000? "Never," I said. "I live on my pension." "I see a recurring transfer," Silas said, "starting in February of 2021, $5,000 a month. It goes to an LLC called Blue Horizon Consulting." I looked at Arthur. He nodded at Silas to dig deeper. "Blue Horizon is a shell," Silas said minutes later. "The registered agent is your son, David, but the spending account attached to it is interesting. It is being used to pay rent on a luxury apartment in the city, and for jewelry, and for travel." "Travel?" I asked. "David and Sarah have not taken a vacation in years. They always complain about money." "Not with Sarah," Silas said softly. He turned the screen toward me. There were flight manifests, hotel bookings, all for 2 passengers, David Miller and a woman named Jessica Tate. The room went silent. My son was not just a thief. He was an adulterer. He was stealing from his mother to fund a double life, while his wife, the woman actively helping him destroy me, sat at home, unaware. "There is more," Arthur said, pointing to a red line on the spreadsheet. "Look at the dates, Margaret." I squinted at the screen. The dates coincided with my doctor appointments. The appointments I had missed because David told me they were rescheduled. "He canceled them," Arthur said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "He deliberately canceled your checkups. And here, look at the pharmacy records. He picked up your heart medication, but he never delivered the full dosage to you. He was withholding your pills." My hand flew to my mouth. The fatigue, the confusion I had felt in the weeks leading up to the hospital. It was not old age. It was not dementia. It was a slow, calculated poisoning by omission. He needed me weak. He needed me to look frail so he could take control before I noticed the missing money. "This is criminal negligence," Arthur stated. "Attempted harm, grand larceny. Margaret, we have enough to send him to prison for 10 years. I looked at the evidence of my son's betrayal. It was thorough. It was evil. He had risked my life to keep his mistress in luxury. He had let his mother suffer so he could play the big man. "Do not file the police report yet," I said, my voice steady. Arthur looked at me, shocked. "Margaret, he is dangerous." "I know," I said. "But if we arrest him now, the hearing on the 20th is canceled. I do not want it canceled. I want to look him in the eye when he loses everything." I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn David wanted to sell. "He wants to prove I am incompetent in front of a judge," I said. "I will let him try. And when he stands up to speak, when he thinks he has won, I will destroy him with his own paper trail." "We need one more thing," Silas said. "We need proof of the intent regarding the hospital admission. We need to know exactly what he said to the doctors." "I can get that," I said. "I have a friend in administration who owes me a favor from 1988. She retires next week. She has nothing to lose either." I picked up the phone again. The grief was gone. The mother in me had died the moment I saw those canceled prescriptions. The woman who remained was cold, sharp, and ready for justice. I dialed the number. "Hello, Susan. It is Margaret. I need to see the security footage from the hallway outside my room on the night of the 10th. "Yes." The night they made me sign. I listened for a moment, then nodded. Perfect, I said. I will be there in an hour. I hung up and turned to Arthur. Get the car. We are going to the hospital. David thought he had buried me. He was about to find out that he had only planted a seed, and the harvest was going to be bitter. Susan met us at the service entrance. She looked older than I remembered, her hair now a soft gray, but her eyes held the same sharp intelligence that had made her a formidable administrator back in 1995. She handed me a small black flash drive without a word. I squeezed her hand. It was a silent transaction between two women who understood that sometimes the truth needs to be taken, not given. Back in the safety of Arthur's study, we watched the footage. It was grainy, but the audio was crisp. There stood David and his wife, Sarah, right outside my hospital room door. The timestamp read the 10th of October, 2023. She is out of it, David said on the recording. The nurse said the sedative is heavy. If we shove the papers in front of her now, she will sign anything just to make the spinning stop. Sarah laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound. Make sure she signs the power of attorney first. I do not want to wait for probate to get the remodeling done on the kitchen. I paused the video. My hand did not shake. The sadness that had plagued me for weeks had completely evaporated, replaced by a clarity that felt like ice water in my veins. They were not worried about my health. They were worried about their kitchen renovation. This proves undue influence, Arthur said, taking off his glasses. It proves they manipulated your medical state to secure legal authority. It is good, I said, but it is not enough. I want them to have nothing left to fight with. The door opened, and Silas walked in. He was carrying a thick stack of documents and a look of disbelief on his face. He placed the papers on the desk with a heavy thud. Margaret, Silas said, I have been digging into the public records regarding David's assets. I wanted to see where the money he stole from you went. I found something much more interesting. He spread the papers out. They were property deeds and loan agreements. David and Sarah have been living a lie for 5 years, Silas explained. You thought they were successful. You thought David's business was thriving. It is not. The business has been insolvent since 2021. To keep up appearances, to keep up the country club memberships and the luxury cars, David took out a massive second mortgage on their home. I looked at the documents. The numbers were staggering. He is 4 months behind, Silas continued. The bank has already initiated the pre-foreclosure process. That is why he was so desperate to sell your house, Margaret. He needs your equity to pay off his arrears before the bank takes his home. He is robbing Peter to pay Paul, but he is running out of time. A plan formed in my mind. It was ruthless. It was perfect. Who holds the note? I asked. A private equity firm bought the distressed debt from the regional bank last week, Silas said. They are aggressive. They just want their money, or the asset. Call them, I said. Arthur looked at me. Margaret, what are you doing? I have the investment account my husband left me, I said. The one David does not know about, because it is in a trust under my maiden name. It has enough. Enough for what? Arthur asked. To buy the debt, I said. I want to buy the mortgage note on David's house. I do not want the bank to foreclose on him. I want to be the one who holds the deed. Silas smiled. It was a slow, predatory smile. If you buy the note, you become the lender. You have all the rights of the bank. You can demand full payment. You can foreclose. You effectively own his house until he pays you every cent. Make the call, I ordered. Offer them the full value plus 5% for an immediate transfer of the lien. I want the paperwork signed before the hearing on the 20th. The next 48 hours were a blur of wire transfers and legal contracts. We moved quietly. The private equity firm was happy to offload a toxic asset for cash. They did not care who bought it. They did not know the buyer was the mother of the debtor. By the evening of the 18th of October, the papers were on Arthur's desk. I picked up the heavy document. It was done. I ran my finger over the address listed on the deed. It was the house where David raised my grandchildren. The house where Sarah hosted her dinner parties and complained about my old lady smell. The house they thought was their castle. Technically, they were still the owners on paper. But I was the bank, and they were in default. He has no idea, Arthur whispered. He is going to walk into that courtroom thinking he is about to take control of your estate. He does not know you already own his. He wanted to handle the family finances, I said, placing the deed into my leather satchel. Now he will answer to me for every penny. I looked out the window. The sun was going down, but for the first time in a long time, I was not afraid of the dark. I was the one bringing the storm. "We are ready for the hearing," I said. "Let us go see what my son has to say to the judge." The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now, all I had to do was wait for the steel jaws to snap shut. The 19th of October arrived with a sharp chill in the air. It was the evening before the court hearing. David had insisted I attend a gathering at his home. He called it a celebration of family unity, but I knew it was a performance. He needed to show his creditors and his social circle that he was stable. He needed to parade his compliant mother around to prove he had control over the family assets. Arthur drove me to the house. It was a sprawling estate with manicured lawns and high pillars. Cars lined the long driveway. I clutched my purse. Inside sat the document that would bring his world crashing down. I entered the foyer. The noise of the party washed over me. Crystal glasses clinked and laughter rang out. Sarah rushed over, her smile tight and fake. She wore a silk dress that likely cost more than my monthly pension. "You made it," she said, gripping my arm a little too hard. "Just sit in the corner and try not to spill anything, Margaret. David has important investors here tonight. Do not embarrass us." I nodded slowly. "I will be very quiet, Sarah." They placed me on a velvet settee near the back of the room. From my vantage point, I watched my son work the room. He looked confident. He looked rich. He was shaking hands, clapping men on the back, and laughing loudly. He was selling them a lie. He was celebrating a victory he had not yet won. Halfway through the evening, David tapped a spoon against a champagne flute. The room fell silent. He stood on the grand staircase, looking down at us like a king addressing his subjects. "Thank you all for coming," David announced, his voice booming. "Tonight is about the future. As many of you know, our family is undergoing a transition. I am stepping up to manage the family estate to ensure security for everyone, especially my mother." He gestured toward me. All eyes turned to the corner where I sat. There was pity in their gazes. They saw a frail old woman losing her mind. David saw a bank account. "It is a heavy burden," David continued, sighing theatrically. "But family comes first. This house represents that stability. We are expanding, and with the new capital coming under my management tomorrow, we will be investing heavily in the community." Applause broke out. He was spending my money before the judge had even signed the order. The arrogance was suffocating. I stood up. The movement caught David's eye. He frowned, signaling for Sarah to make me sit down. I ignored her. I walked toward the center of the room. The crowd parted. I moved with a steady, purposeful gait. I was not the confused woman they expected. "Mother," David said, his voice dropping to a warning whisper as I reached the bottom of the stairs. "Sit down. You are tired." "I am not tired, David," I said. My voice was clear. It carried through the silent room. "I just wanted to give you a gift. Since you are talking about the future of this house." David forced a smile for his guests. "That is sweet, Mother. We can open it later." "No," I said firmly. "Open it now. It is relevant to your announcement." I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick blue folder. I held it out to him. The guests watched with curiosity. They thought it was a sentimental gesture, perhaps a photo album. David stepped down one stair and took the folder. He opened it casually, still smiling at the crowd. Then his eyes fell on the top page. The smile vanished. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like he might faint. He flipped the page, then another. His hands began to shake. "What is this?" he whispered. "Read it, David," I said. He stared at me, his eyes wide with panic. He could not speak. I turned to the guests. "My son is too modest to explain," I said calmly. "He is holding the deed to this property, or rather the transfer of the lien. You see, the bank was foreclosing on this house due to non-payment. David was 4 months behind." Gasps rippled through the room. Sarah dropped her glass. It shattered on the marble floor. "But family does come first," I continued, looking directly at David. "So I bought the debt. I paid off the bank. I am the new lender, David. You do not owe the bank anymore. You owe me." "This is not possible," David stammered. "You do not have—" I have the full authority to call the loan due immediately if the terms of the mortgage are violated, I said, reciting the clause Silas had highlighted for me. And since you are in default, I am exercising my right. You have 30 days to pay the full balance of the mortgage, David, or I will take the house. The silence in the room was absolute. The investors looked at David with horror. His facade of wealth had dissolved in seconds. He was not a successful tycoon. He was a man living on credit who had just been exposed by his own mother. "You cannot do this," Sarah shrieked, rushing forward. "This is our house." "Not anymore," I said softly. "Technically, until you pay me the $800,000 you owe, you are guests in my property." I looked at David. He was slumped against the banister, the papers crinkled in his grip. The trap had snapped shut. He had invited an audience to witness his glory, and instead, they had witnessed his ruin. "I will see you in court tomorrow, son," I said. "Do not be late." I turned and walked away. The crowd parted for me again, but this time there was no pity in their eyes. There was only respect and fear. I walked out the front door into the cool night air. Arthur was waiting by the car. "How did it go?" he asked as he opened the door for me. "He knows," I said. "Now let us finish this." The humiliation was complete, but the justice was not yet final. Tomorrow, the judge would decide if I was competent enough to control my own life. David would fight like a cornered animal. I had to be ready for his final, desperate strike. The courtroom smelled of old wood and floor wax. I sat beside Arthur and my attorney, Silas, keeping my hands folded in my lap. My son sat at the other table. David looked exhausted. His suit was wrinkled, and the arrogance he usually wore like a shield was gone. Sarah sat behind him, looking nervous. She kept checking her watch. The judge was a stern woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She adjusted her glasses and looked at David. "Petitioner," she said, "you are claiming that your mother, Mrs. Evelyn Moore, is mentally incompetent and requires an immediate guardianship. You cite erratic behavior and financial irresponsibility." David stood up. His voice shook slightly. "Yes, Your Honor. Last night, she caused a scene at a private event. She humiliated me and my wife. She claimed to have bought a mortgage note, which is impossible for a woman of her age and condition to manage. She is confused. She is spending her savings on delusions of grandeur. I only want to protect her assets for her own care." The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Moore, how do you respond?" I stood up slowly. I did not look at David. I looked only at the judge. "I am not confused, Your Honor," I said softly. "I am simply tired of being treated like a burden by the people who should love me." Silas stood up and placed a heavy stack of papers on the bench. "Your Honor, we would like to submit evidence regarding the petitioner's true motivation. These are bank records obtained during the discovery phase of the foreclosure proceedings." David went pale. He tried to grab Sarah's hand, but she pulled away. "These records show that David Moore has not only defaulted on his mortgage," Silas continued, his voice echoing in the quiet room, "but he has also drained a joint account he held with his wife, Sarah. The funds were used to pay online gambling debts and to lease a luxury car in his name only." Sarah gasped. The sound was loud and sharp. "What?" she whispered. "David, you said that money was in the investment fund." "And finally," Silas said, producing a tablet, "we have a voicemail David left for his real estate agent 2 days ago. We subpoenaed it as part of the financial investigation." Silas pressed play. David's voice filled the room, sounding angry and desperate. "Just stall the bank for 1 more week. I am putting the old woman in a home on Friday. Once I have the guardianship, I can liquidate her portfolio and clear the arrears. She won't know the difference. She will be sedated anyway." The recording ended. The silence in the courtroom was heavy and suffocating. Sarah stood up. Her face was red with fury. She looked at the man she had conspired with, the man she had helped torment me. "You were going to use her money to fix your mess?" Sarah screamed. "You told me we were rich. You told me she was the problem." "Sarah, please," David begged, reaching for her. "I had a plan." "You are a liar," she spat. She grabbed her purse and marched out of the courtroom. The heavy door slammed behind her. The alliance was shattered. David stood alone, exposed and trembling. The judge looked at David with pure disgust. "Mr. Moore, Your petition is denied with prejudice. Furthermore, I am forwarding this transcript to the district attorney's office. This looks very much like attempted fraud and elder abuse. She banged her gavel. The sound was like a gunshot. Case dismissed. David slumped into his chair. He put his head in his hands. He did not look at me. I walked over to his table. Arthur stood close behind me, a silent protector. I placed a hand on the table, forcing David to look up. His eyes were filled with tears, but I felt no pity. I had used all my pity years ago. You have 30 days to vacate my house, David, I said. I suggest you start packing. The real estate market is tough for people with no credit. I turned and walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was bright with sunlight. It was the 25th of October, and the air was crisp. Arthur opened the car door for me. Where to, Evelyn? Home, I said. Take me to my new home. I have a garden to plant. I settled back into the leather seat. I watched the city pass by through the window. For months, I had been a ghost in my own life. I had been silent while they planned my demise. But silence is not weakness. Silence is where you hear the truth, and when the time is right, the truth speaks louder than any scream. I closed my eyes and smiled. Finally, everything was quiet.